Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the 5th Ethical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. Today is August 11th, 2013. Welcome, everyone. And let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. And you want to pray for us today, dear?
Heavenly Father, we come together today to not only to worship you, but to learn your word so that we may be better examples and better able to communicate your word and understand it to others. Help each of us to be the very best we can be each day. Be with us and bless us in your patience, with your understanding and love and compassion and mercy and praise. Help each of us to be kind to one another and each person that we meet along the way. May our minds be open and receptive to the information that's going to be shared today. Thank you for blessing Roger and giving him the wisdom and the opportunity and desire to interpret and help us to understand the shepherd. It is in the name of Jesus Christ, my Lord, we pray.
Amen. Amen. Okay, we're on page 510, and that's the Foreword, section 3, paragraph 11. Section 3, paragraph 11. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And did you find it right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you give us a start out today?
And so paragraph
3, section 11, the first source and center is therefore. See that?
first, yes. The first source and center is therefore primal in all domain, deified or undeified, personal or impersonal, actual or potential, finite or infinite. No thing or being, no relativity or finality exists except in direct or indirect relations to and dependent on the premises of the first source and center.
And that's why they call him the first source and center, isn't it? All reality starts with the first source and center, the I am, right? Okay? And I like the way they break this down, deified and undeified. So it's talking about both deity personalities and non-deity personalities, plus non-deity matter also. That includes what? Paradise and the super universes, right? So it's primal to all those things, personal and impersonal. Both personal as each one of us and impersonal in what? In the Father fragments, the thought adjusters, okay? There's also some other impersonal beings, that help control the function of the super universes too. And many of those are impersonal, and those are all begin with the Father too. Actual or potential, so everything that is and everything that is to come, okay? Finite and infinite, so it covers both us as finite beings all the way up to the absolute in paradise, the absolute personalities of paradise. No thing or being, relative, well, don't do that to me. Okay, let's fix to not do this here. Well, let's keep going. No thing or being, oops, wrong one. Well, excuse me for a second. Yeah, this fixed not to go on standby. Nothing or being relative or finite exists in direct or indirect relation to. So there is nothing that exists in all this universe that is not the first source and center of the beginning, right? Now what would follow with that? If the first source and center exists in everything, would you think the second source of center, which is the sun, and the third source and center this is true with them also, right? In many respects, right? Okay.
So that that also explains why in rebellion you cannot continue to exist that way.
That's right.
Because you're disconnected, you're out of sync, you're out of harmony, and you're
non-reality, right? You're impinging on non-reality.
Right.
And that's why they call it what? Cosmic insanity. Rebellion ends up in cosmic insanity, right? Because if you can't live within reality, what would you be? You would be cosmically insane.
In direct or indirect relation to or dependence on.
That's right. God the Father. That's right. Or the first source and center. All right, I'll read this little paragraph. The first source and center is related to the universe as. All right. And you want to take the next one, Donna?
Number 1. The gravity forces of the material universes are convergent in the gravity center of the nether paradise. That is just why the geographic of his person is eternally fixed in absolute relation to the force energy center of the nether or material plane of paradise. But the absolute personality of deity exists on the upper or spiritual plane of paradise.
Okay, I have a great picture for this stuff we're talking today. I'm going to take a little side. This is from when we were doing the studies of the Master Universe. We never got this far, but I thought I'd use the slide anyway. This is a diagram of paradise. Okay, this big green circle. Okay, and you can see at the very top is the deity presence. Now, why do they say the deity presence and not the Father presence?
All three.
All three are in that presence, right? Deity, right? The Father exists there, of course, but they always work in conjunction. So wouldn't it make sense that all three of them would be there?
Part of the
Yeah.
Trinity.
Part of the Trinity. That's right. And you'll see just outside that center is the most holy sphere. Now we'll cover these a little bit later on when we study this. But you can see just outside that is the paradise citizens or Havona natives. Okay? So that's where, when they talk about absolute beings, that's where they live. Okay?
But that's not the same name. Paradise Citizen and Havana natives are not the same, are they?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
What Havana is different. Than
Yes, it is. But the natives of Havona are eventuated. So this is where they come from. Okay? Get that?
Yeah, but then what is the difference with the Paradise Citizens?
The paradise citizens are perfect. They're absolute. The Havona citizens are transcendental.
Okay, but the Havana natives live in Havana, aren't they?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Paradise Citizens.
This is where they dwell, though, when they come to paradise.
So when they come to paradise, they dwell with the Paradise Citizens. This is what we are saying. Okay.
Yeah. Okay?
But they are not the same. They are two different
Two different beings.
kinds of beings.
Kinds of beings, yeah, from what I understand. All right, now the paradise citizens are totally separate, right? Those are absolute existential beings, or citizens. All right, so in essence, if you think of existential, they call them existential, but they had to be created the same time that paradise was, didn't they? Because there was nothing before paradise, right? And they talk about God creating paradise at the same time that he split himself and made the sun, right? Paradise appeared. So it would make sense that those citizens started then, even though they're considered existential, always have been, always will be, because they consider paradise in the same manner, right? Always has been, always will be. It's a paradox.
Is there a constant numbers of Paradise Citizens?
Yes.
A
All
constant
created.
there,
Yeah, they were all created at the same instant.
and no more is being created.
No more is being created.
Now, in the deity in the center, so there's no citizens or natives in the center there. That's just the space.
No, that's the place for the deity presence. When you go stand before God the Father, that's where you'll go. The center of paradise. Okay. Now, an interesting thing is the holy area. You see this? Now, when we study this, we're going to find out that there's enough space on paradise for every created finite being in all the universes.
Yeah,
You have a
That's
space
amazing.
reserved for you.
exactly. That was absolutely amazing.
And isn't it true that it is not only for now, but for the eternal future?
For the
Is
eternal future.
I was reading and it said something like maybe not even just a small number of all just this gigantic. I mean, it's impossible to. It
Yeah.
talked about the billions of citizens there,
Yeah.
and they only occupied not a tenth, not a. I mean,
It's
not
so
just,
small, it's not
and,
even.
and it
yeah.
said, you know,
So there's enough growth there for
Right.
through eternity.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But another thing to consider is that paradise doesn't have.
Because you can see here, see this one here? Nadies of the 7 super universes. This one here.
That's
That's
us.
that's only this little area right here. Okay.
But that area is.
Look what's out beyond that. We're not even talking. This is that little area. This little area we're talking about here. This little bitty slice here. All right. This is paradise citizens. Okay, and Havona natives. Right. That takes up all of Havona and all of paradise. Okay. The next little slice is for the 7 super universes. Okay. Now think of this. Don't you think that this is probably the first outer space level, and this is probably the second outer space level, and so on and so on? And notice how many rings there are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Look at it all together. 6, 7. Everything's in sevens. All right? You notice that? So that makes me think that there's probably going to be 7 rings of the outer space level eventually. But I could be wrong. Yeah. But it's interesting that this one little ring is just for the 7 super universes. Now we're talking all 7. We're not talking 1. We're talking about all 7 super universes, right? So if these continually get larger and larger and larger, imagine the space out there for all of the outer space level.
But a couple of points. First point is that isn't paradise that it doesn't have space, does it?
Huh?
It doesn't have space, right? Paradise.
It's beyond time and space.
So
yeah.
so whatever we whatever we can think of that space is within our material mind, right?
Yeah,
The concept of space in paradise is probably very, very different.
it is.
Right?
It's beyond imagination.
Probably so.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing to consider is that the deity is at the presence is at the center, right? The
Right,
three
the very center.
eternal. Now, from a geometrical perspective, the center is the smallest part.
Yes,
Right.
it is.
But if you think about it, right,
Yeah.
they must be bigger than everyone else.
Oh, it's they say that
So
the
2%.
space, the space of all of paradise is larger than all 7 super universes
something
and
like that.
all the outer space level.
It said that in Paradise, the citizen of Paradise in Havana, I think it said it was less. They took up their inhabitants took up less than 2%
Yeah,
of the billions,
yeah. The
and it
big-
said billions,
yeah. Less
and
than
it
2%.
said it took up 2% of their space,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
But what is interesting is that the center, right, which is the smallest part from our mind perspective, from the geometry in space
Yeah.
that we are familiar with, this is the center of infinity.
Yes.
Right? So this center, I mean, in my mind, and the way I kind of interpret it the best I can with my human mind, is that it is from infinite, right? It is
Yeah.
infinite, right? So
Well, I'm going to take you one, hold that thought, I'm going to take you one step further. Okay, this is a cross section. This is upper paradise and neither paradise.
What do they mean by that, Roger? Another paradise?
Well, I'm going to show you.
Okay, cool.
Okay? All right. Let's just read through this because this is interesting. It's going to fill in some of the gaps. The central aisle ends abruptly at the periphery, but the sides are so enormous that the terminal angle is relatively indiscernible within the circumscribed area. The peripheral surface of paradise is occupied in part by the landing and the dispatching fields of various groups of spirit personalities. Since the non-pervaded space zones nearly impinge upon the periphery, all personality transports destined to paradise land in these regions. Neither upper nor neither paradise is approachable by transport seraphim or other types of space transversers. Okay, this is the part I wanted to read here. The 7 master spirits have their personal seats of power and authority on the 7 spheres of the spirit which circle about paradise in the space between the shining orbs of the sun and the inner circle of the Havana worlds. But they maintain force focal headquarters on the paradise periphery. Here Here, the slowly circling presences of the 7 supreme power directors, you know, we've talked about these a little bit, indicate the location of the 7 flash stations for certain paradise energies going forth through the 7 super universes. Now, this is what they're talking about. These are the master spirits of the force, right? Executive worlds of the master spirits. Okay, and the force comes from that. But, see, this is an exhibition area for creator sons, which is really kind of interesting too. You know, 700,000 creator sons. This is really what I want to peripheral paradise. This is all interesting. We're going to come back and get all this. All right. This is neither paradise. If you were looking at paradise and it was a disc, okay, it's this section on the bottom, right? Okay, and this is what they're talking about, neither paradise. This is right underneath what? God the Father,
Yeah, the Trinity.
right? The Trinity. They call it the zone of infinity. What a name. Because it makes perfect sense. If God the Father is at the top and all gravity goes from the bottom, a neither paradise circulates around and comes back into the top, right? It would make sense that this would be what? The zone of infinity.
May I add something?
Yeah.
Would it be the zone of infinity because matter is created from the unqualified absolute,
That's
and
right.
it has the reserve of everything that is potential?
Everything that is potential. That's right. That's perfect. It is. The zone of infinity.
Is it
Okay.
incorrect to think of it kind of like a black hole that doesn't?
In essence, because it's a continuous circle that never ends. You know, we think of paradise as a physical circle, right, or a big disc or oblong disc, right? But in essence, all of creation, all of reality comes out from what? The bottom comes back into the top. Now, where does it come from in that bottom? It comes from God the Father, right? You can do it either way, from the top around to the bottom, bottom to the top. It's all the same being. It's all part of God the Father. The unqualified absolute, the qualified absolute, all of these things, including what? Physical gravity. All physical gravity originates down here of everything. Remember, this is the what? The pattern for everything. Okay? And then they have these inner zones, mid zones, and outer zones. And I believe the next slide. Here we go. Neither paradise. Concerning neither paradise, we know that which is revealed. Personalities do not sojourn there. So there's no personalities on the underside of paradise, right? It's not like a planet, is it? Because neither paradise is completely dedicated to these functions, okay? It has nothing whatsoever to do with the affairs of spirit, intelligence, nor does the deity absolute there function. See that?
Yeah, that's the unqualifiers.
That's right. We are informed that all physical energy, cosmic force circuits have their origin in neither paradise. Now, you see this here? Physical energy and cosmic force circuits. What's that to do? That's with the master physical controllers, isn't it? Right? Goes from there to the master physical controllers, and they control it, right? It all has origin in neither paradise, and that is constituted as follows. Directly underneath the location of the Trinity, that was that central place, right? In the central point of neither paradise is the unknown or unrevealed zone of infinity. See that?
Yeah.
This zone is immediately surrounded by an unnamed area. Occupying the outer margins of the undersurface is a region having mainly to do with space, potency, and force energy. The activities of this vast elliptical force center are not identifiable with the known functions of any triunity, but the primordial force change of space seems to be focalized in this area. So you know all these triunities and all these beings we've been talking about has nothing to do with any of them. You follow me? Okay. This center consists of 3 concentric elliptical zones. The innermost is the focal point of force energy. Activities of paradise itself, the outermost might possibly be identified with the functions of the unqualified absolute. Okay? Just what you said. But we are not certain concerning the space functions of the mid-zone. The 7 supreme power directors reside on the peripheral paradise, where they function as the physical energy regulators of the grand universe. Did you see that? You catch that? So it's like 7 arms going out controlling the physical universe. Right? They do that in conjunction with whom? The infinite spirit. Right? Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, that was. Oh, this is something else I wanted to show you. Space respiration. We've talked about this. Okay. The cycles of space respiration extend in each phase for a little more than 1 billion Urantia years. During one phase, the universe expands. During the next phase, it extracts. And here's what we have, all right? It goes out one way to the maximum point, and then this comes in at the same time, and then it does just the opposite, it goes the other direction. So it's like this big lung, right? Breathing. 1 billion years. Now, what would the universe look like in the expansion phase? It would look like the Big Bang Theory, wouldn't it? All matter would be going out, okay, for 1 billion years. We're not talking a couple weeks, we're talking 1 billion years. So when Michael started his first bestowal, it could have been the beginning of that respiration, right? After 1 billion years, which is still going on right now, it will do what? It will start contracting. So it'll look like all the planets are going to what? Fall in on themselves, won't it?
It's a good thing that we are not in that phase. We'd be
Yeah.
like,
Everybody's panicking, wouldn't it? Yeah. Oh my God, we're going to hit all the other planets. We're all going to, right? But our brilliant scientists haven't figured this out yet. Okay? All they see is the expansion, the constant expansion. If you talk to any physicist, they're going to tell you the universe is expanding. You know, it's constantly expanding. Yes.
And they can explain from the fraction of a second from the initial explosion, right?
Right, right.
Mathematically.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Which,
Which actually there was no initial
That's
explosion,
right, that's
right? Okay. But it's an interesting concept.
right.
We're all just literally gonna
Makes
get
sense.
lost out there one of these
Makes
days.
That, yeah,
But this does make sense. What I have a problem with is the arrogance of saying, okay, well, that's it, that's what it is. Right?
this is what it is.
These
Right.
the scientists are saying so,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and a bit more humility in terms of
Well,
going into it as a theory is
yeah. Well, even more arrogance is this. We have these people, and I'm not going to name names because I can think of one off the top of my head, that keeps telling us all of this is a natural course of reaction. It's got nothing to do with God. None of this is
Right.
controlled.
Right.
All of this is controlled by what? This is what we're talking about right here. The gravity force of the material universe, right? All of this is controlled by God the Father, the I Am. Okay? We just read that was, He is in everything. You know, there is no reality that God is not permeate, right?
well, sometimes it's indirect, right?
Huh?
They say sometimes it's indirect,
Indirect.
and
right. But there are many of them that believe that there's no direct control by celestial forces. That's the thing. And what this book teaches us, if nothing else, is that everything is controlled by celestial forces, all the way down from the gravity circuits of the universe to the spiritual circuits, to the mind circuits, to everything in reality has a circuit that's controlled from where? Paradise, right? Father, Son, Spirit, right? Personality, God the Father.
You know, so you can almost understand where they get this concept of a force, but without a personality there. You know,
Yeah.
the Star Wars concept of the force be with you.
The force be with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Without,
Not sure how to do this one.
I guess without the personality, I
Yeah.
guess.
And if you think about it, if the force wasn't with you, you wouldn't exist, would
Right.
you? Yeah.
I think whoever made what's his name, he might have read this book.
You did read it.
Oh, yeah.
He did. Because you know what? The more I read about it, the stuff that he's got in there, and it makes it seems like that's
Yeah.
possible.
That's possible. That's right. That's right. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to where we were to the other
Hey, Rodney.
presentation.
Hey, Roy.
Hey, Rodney.
Hi, Rodney.
Hey guys,
Are
sorry
you,
I,
are you kicking some bears' butts?
Okay, all right, let's keep, did we just read this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down to the next one. Mind forces. Oh, Rodney, you wanna, do you see where we're at? We're on,
I
4.
don't have any video, I can't.
Oh, okay. We're on, the foreword, section 3, paragraph 14.
Okay, my mind's not working that fast.
That's all right.
What, I need the page, I got a.
Page
Page
5.
5.
513.
Page 5?
Page,
Yeah.
yeah, 5.
We're doing the forward.
Yeah.
We're
we
still
didn't
working
get
on
too
the
far.
forward.
Y'all didn't get too far, good deal.
Oh, I need to, we're gonna read this
I
and
need
let's
this
switch over to
one.
something else.
In other words.
No one gets through the forward quickly.
That's right. Might take us 3
Especially
months.
not
Rick.
ours.
Unless you speed reading, you didn't remember anything you wrote. Really.
No. When we get done with the forward, you will understand the forward, I hope.
That's great.
So that was the whole point of all this preparation for the forward. Okay.
So there are some parts before that I anticipate without going to spend a
For
long
number
time.
2.
Yeah. Okay, you ready, Rodney? The mind forces are convergent.
Well, I tell you what,
You want to skip it just this time through?
yeah, give me
Okay.
this time so I can figure out where we are here.
All right, Linda, you want to take the next one?
The mind forces are convergent in the infinite spirit, the differential and divergent cosmic mind in the 7 master spirits, the factualizing mind of the supreme as a time-space experience in Majeston.
Okay, I don't have a picture of those two. I do have a picture, but I don't want to take the time to find it. But let's go back to, we'll go, what's wrong?
He's gonna tell us.
Slide 59 here.
Oh, wow.
I think that we start getting into some. What's the difference between mind forces and the differential and divergent cosmic mind? And then factualizing mind.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, remember this chart from when we studied before? Okay, let's look at this. The mind forces are convergent in the infinite spirit, right? Okay, so what are they talking about here? They're talking about, I don't remember which is which. These circuits right here, right? The mind circuit is this yellow one. You see this? It goes right back to the conjoint actor, the infinite spirit. That's what they're talking about right here. Is these spirit forces, okay, or these spirit circuits, right? What other spirit circuits do we have? We have the blue one, which goes to the sun. What's that one? That's a spiritual circuit, right? And then we have what? The personality circuit, right? Which goes where?
Universal Father.
Universal Father, okay? And they call these the universal gravity circuits. It's not only physical, it's spiritual, mindal, right? And physical. And personal.
Personal, spiritual, mindful,
Mindal,
physical.
physical, right? Now what's interesting, the physical part, you see this green line, which we can't follow it all the way back, but this green line comes from paradise, okay? And paradise is involved in this physical universe, okay? Because the gravity for the physical universe comes from where? Underneath paradise. So you have another gravity circuit is this green line, and it goes all the way down around the chart and ends up back at I can go ahead a couple, but it comes back to paradise, okay? Now the interesting part is this, you see this connection right here? This blue and this yellow, it's connected to green. You see that right there? You know what that connection means? It means that the infinite spirit and the sun are the integrators between the mind, the spirit, and the physical. Okay? So that little connection there is the representation of how the infinite spirit works to keep the mind part together, to keep the physical part together, and integrate it with the spiritual. It's kind of part of that glue. And this is part of what? The triodities that we spent so much time in. Right here, you see Son, Paradise, Conjoint Actor? This is the triodity of actuality. That's what this is here, isn't it?
Non-father relationship.
Non-father relationship. Now do you see why that triodity is so important? It's all this things that his what? God's associates are in charge of taking care of for him, right? Now, could God do that by himself? Of course he could. But he chose to what? Split himself to the Son and the Spirit, right? So this is his associations, and that's why they call it triodities. It's the odd part, right? That's why they call it triodities. It's odd because it doesn't have the Father. It's a non-father triune relationship.
Now, that's the part I don't understand. Conceptually, the personally part of it is the integrator. This is the unifier.
This is the unifier. That's
So
right.
why isn't that spiritual mind, physical aspect, integration, unification you're talking about, is without the personal part?
But because personality is not required for this. And the Father reserves personality for himself. That's why he gives us the thought adjuster.
He
right?
delegated
He
everything else.
delegated everything else. He reserved the right of personality. That's why there's no personality involved in this, are there?
But-
Now, in essence, there is, because you got the personality of the Son and the personality of the Spirit, right? But there's no direct personality for other creatures. This is like the control of all other aspects necessary for you to find the Father, but he reserved that one personality part that he wants to personally give to you himself. Makes you special.
So what are we talking about with this green line? Are we talking about creatures that are...
We're talking about creatures, we're talking about all physical reality. You think about it, because,
Transcendentals.
well, you got transcendentals, because paradise is the physical pattern, right? That's why that's green. All physical reality is connected to paradise. This is how all physical reality is connected to paradise. See, people think, well, we're not really connected to paradise because we're way out here, but we are, because paradise being the pattern, everything comes from paradise. The gravity circuit comes from paradise. The physical part of the universe comes from where? Paradise.
But I thought the universal father, we just read that, was the universal, the first cylinder is related to the universe, gravity forces. I thought the universal father was the primordial controller of gravity.
He is.
So
He
why
is.
isn't he in this?
But he delegates the responsibility to manage that to the Son and the conjoint actor in paradise. See, he has to be there. He can't separate himself from himself, right? Because we all live and have our being within the Father. But he does not take direct personal responsibility. That's why they call this a non-father triune relationship. In other words, he's delegated those things and stepped back. Right? Even though he's always going to be what? The first source and center, ultimate controller of everything.
What would be a name of some of the things that personality void? Like the power circuit directors?
Yeah, some of the lower power controllers would be personality voidless circuits. There's some being they're called physical circuits.
But it has to do with the gravity, energy, and...
It has to do with the physical control of the universe, and there are beings, but they do not have personality.
Exactly.
They're like large machines. They do the same
Exactly.
thing over and over and
Yeah.
over and over. And they're personalityless because God chose to make them that way. Why would he choose to make a non-personal being? Because it's a job that's just a redundant thing
Right.
that has to be done over and over and over. And he doesn't want to trap any of his children into having to do that constantly, you know? So that's why he creates these beings that are non-personal. They have no personality. They don't mind doing it over
Right,
and over
right.
and over again.
Is it what we are talking about with a green line?
Huh?
Is it what we are talking about with a green line?
Green light, yeah, yeah. Those would be beings that are non-personal because they're from the pattern of paradise.
Right.
So are we talking? Are we saying then that the integration of the mind and spirit with matter is a mechanical process?
In a sense, it is. Yeah, yeah. Some of it, the physical part of it, the mind and spirit is not. Mind constantly tries to control what? Matter. Right? Spirit is the over control of mind. So if you think of it, spirit is on the top, mind is the next thing down, and then there's the physical. So you have a spiritual being that has the concept of deity, right? Who tries to control what? Their own mind, their own thinking, their own living. And that mind is the part that tries to control what? The physical being. Now it works all the way down through the universe. Not only universes, but it works in our body that way. Okay? Think of it this way. We have a thought adjuster, okay? And with our minds, we eventually try to do what? To touch the spiritual. So we try to communicate with God the Father, bring out the spiritual side of us, okay? And through our mind, we do what? We control our body. Some of it's conscious, some of it's unconscious. But you need that mind for the functions of the body. Some of them are what they call automatic nervous system, automatic functions, right? Breathing, that sort of thing. But if the mind gets cut off, what happens? You die. Those functions stop. So some of them you don't have to think about. But as human beings, we try to control what? Our physical body constantly. We try to look good. We try to control our weight. Because if we just go by what our urges are, we will all be what? We would look like a bunch of blobs walking around because we would feed ourselves till we die, wouldn't we? Because we don't control it. But if we control ourselves, okay, we can kind of control what we look like. So the thing about life is this: we go through life trying to hone the ability of our spiritual self to control our mind, to control our body. That's what the whole name of the game is.
So if you can convince people that there is no God, all that exists is just here in the physical, and that's it, you know?
Yeah, so when your physical die, what happens? You die.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Roger, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I get confused between the brain and the mind.
The brain is not the mind, okay? The mind is that over control of the brain. The brain is the physical part of your being, okay? The mind dwells within the brain, but the mind is not the brain.
Is the brain the mechanism?
The brain is the physical mechanism. The mind is you have to think of the mind as something almost morontial,
Yeah.
okay? It's above the mind. In other words, we have the superimposition of this morontial type start encased in our head, okay? And somewhere along with that, the thought adjuster comes and dwells too, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got a lot of stuff in that little head. But when the physical mechanism of the brain stops functioning, what happens? The thought adjuster is released, isn't he, at that point? And the physical mechanism may go on. You know, it might continue to function without the thought adjuster.
But your mind,
But your mind is still there. Now, it may be because the physical brain gets damaged, your mind may not be able to control it any longer, and at that point, as far as the Urantia book says, you're dead, even though you go on. So let's say you go out and have this horrible accident and half of your brain gets destroyed, and you cannot no longer think and reason. What happens? Your thought adjuster's released, you're recorded as dead, and that all your memories and all that goes on to what? To the mansion world. Now your physical being could keep going living for 10 years, couldn't it? In a coma or whatever. But it's not you any longer. Why?
Do we know if for those people in that state, are they sleeping up there, or are they going on? Are they awakened and
They
go?
would be awakened and go on, just like if everything completely died. Because the mind that's left, whatever's left, that's keeping that functioning being going, is no longer what? Personalized. You know, we're talking about personality and beings that have no personality. It would be the same exact thing. All it's doing is keeping that body alive. That's all that mind is doing. It has no personality anymore. It has no logic or reasoning capabilities. It's just going to keep functioning like over and over. It's habit. You know, the human body is much habit. We do the same things over and over. You feed it, you water it, it keeps going, right? That doesn't mean there's a spiritual being in there anymore. Okay, that spiritual being has been released, goes to paradise, and starts its real life.
I got a question. You said mansion world. I was reading somewhere this week where it said that the mansion world is sort of like our interpretation of heaven.
Yes, it is. It's our concept of heaven,
So
not paradise.
okay.
Paradise is not our concept of heaven. Our concept of heaven, what we've been told down through the ages, you know, the golden streets and beautiful, you know, eat all you want and all that stuff, that's a mansion world. That's not paradise.
Which is in until the ancient book, all this was basically confused, right? The
Yeah.
same way the
Yeah.
eternal Son and the Creator Son
Was
are
confused.
Right, right.
confused. Right?
But that goes to show, I mean, if we are calling heaven, which is our belief that that's the end of I mean, that's where we're going to be, how far we're off track. If the mansion world, and you know, you have to think about that, if the mansion world is our heaven, which I'm pretty sure from reading, it's a just beautiful and gorgeous place,
Yeah.
but it's not our end.
No, it's our beginning.
It's our beginning. And
Yeah.
it's our beginning.
Just the remedial aspect of
Exactly.
our earth life.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, heaven, you know,
But
so
you think about it, we already, before we even found this book, we already had a glimpse that there was more than that, because remember, Paul was caught up to the third heaven.
right.
So
You mean
know,
John?
Apostle Paul.
John.
Paul was also
Paul. Yeah. Yeah.
in First
Yeah.
Corinthians.
Yeah.
Paul was caught up to the first heaven, so
Yeah.
But
to
you
the third heaven.
but think about it again. Think about our creator son. Think about how many more created sons is in our super universe.
Right. Right.
And when you say, I go to prepare a place for you, so where I am, you may be also.
Right. But not immediately.
Not immediately,
Yeah.
but
No, not immediately.
Let's keep going. Okay. So, all right. Let's get through this paragraph here. The mind forces converted in the infinite spirit. That's what we're talking about here, right? And the differential and divergent cosmic mind are the seven master spirits. Okay. What does that include? That includes the physical, right? Remember we just looked at some of the master spirits? Okay? That includes the physical, the spiritual, and the mindal. Okay? So that's what they're talking about, the differential and divergent cosmic mind. It's got what? Multiple parts, doesn't it? It's not just one piece of the cosmic mind. You have the what? The potential, the personality, the spiritual, the mindal, and the physical, right? Okay? And the factualizing mind of the Supreme. Aha! This is the big aha for today. As time-space experience in Majeston. What does Majeston do?
Reflexivity, sir.
Reflectivity.
reflective.
Reflectivity. It allows all the deities to be anywhere at the same time, doesn't it? It allows reflection from any of the seven universes back to God the Father, or back to the infinite spirit, or back to all the deities. Okay. The Supreme. Now, in order for Majeston to be created, the Supreme exhausted all potentiality trying to create a way to communicate through all the super universes. Now think about this. The Supreme Being exhausted all potential ways to communicate out through the seven super universes and beyond. And not being able to come up with a solution to this problem, Majeston was eventuated. Okay? So Majeston came into being as a default that there's no other possible way to do this. Okay? That's why there's only one Majeston. It's a single concept, right? Now, Majeston has all these what? Other spirits that he communicates through. That's part of what? The infinite spirit. All right? The spirit circuit of the spirit. But this is very, very important in the fact that since this is an experiential part of God, this is an experiencing part of God, he was trying to communicate with what? The finite beings. Okay? So what did he use? He used the Supreme, didn't he? He had to use the Supreme, didn't he? There was no other, no other way to do it. Because the Supreme is the only experiential part of God in our universe right now. Right? So it makes sense that that's what would happen. That's why the Supreme's so important. And where did the Supreme come from? Well, the Supreme came from
Trinity.
the Trinity. That's right. Let me go back over here.
Roger,
Yeah.
would it be right to say that the Supreme utilizes Majeston?
Yes, that would be right. But Majeston is a personality, unlike just a circuit.
What
Okay?
about the ultimate? Would it utilize Majeston?
All of them utilize Majeston now. Because anything that's experiential, anything that has any part of experiential associated with it has to use Majeston as communication. Right?
Okay.
Now think about this too. We're talking about the infinite spirit being the ministering spirit to all the beings in the master universe. Okay? We all have thought adjusters, don't we? God the Father can communicate with every thought adjuster anytime simultaneously, can he? So God the Father can communicate with us directly, can he not? So why would we need Majeston? Because it's the extension of God using it for the experiential part of the universe. You see that? That's why the Supreme is so important here. It's the Supreme being able to communicate just like God the Father does. The Supreme doesn't have a fragment in each one of us, does it? Okay? So how does it do it? It does it through Majeston. All the ministering spirits. Okay? Why do you think you have a guardian angel associated with you? They can communicate with Majeston instantaneously. How do you think you're judged probably when you go to on your first judgment? Through reflectivity. That's right. So this one act created a possibility of communication to every creature in the universe.
And because we went in rebellion, none of this is severed. This isn't part of that, right?
This is not separate.
It's not severed.
No.
Now
Now, what
there are
is
some
severed-
circuits on this.
Yeah, what is severed is the circuits of the cosmic circuits of the universe of communication. When a planet is severed,
quarantined.
you are cut off. You're quarantined. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I know the angels can still communicate through the reflectivity circuit, but I don't think anybody else can at that point.
You know, when I was reading it somewhere in there, I just think it's a part of our brain. When you say communication, it's a part of us that's just not turned off or just turned off.
Well, in essence, there is, and that's your communication with God the Father. You know, but the closer you get to fusion, what happens? The closer and closer and closer you get to fusion, the more you can discriminate the voice of God in your head. You know, you have to be careful about that though, because you can get yourself in trouble real quick with that, can't you? Okay, let's keep moving on. Jill, you want to take this one and the next one because this is one sentence.
The universe spirit forces are convergent in the eternal Son.
Did we not just see that on that chart? All the forces converge in the eternal Son. Now, what else that it comes in? The other forces are convergent in what? The other deities, right? Okay.
The unlimited capacity for deity action resides in the deity absolute.
Okay, now why in the deity absolute? The unlimited capacity for deity action. Because it's the controlling factor of all acting deity, is it not? The deity absolute? It's the potential of deity right? The deity absolute. It's not the actual of deity, it's the potential of deity. So the unlimited capacity for deity action would reside in whom? The deity absolute, right? Okay. Let's keep going. Go ahead and take another one, Gio, because you've been...
The unlimited capacity for infinity response exists in the unqualified absolute.
What's the place here?
This is interesting
Okay.
that they are talking about, they are referring to the unqualified absolute as a response,
That's right. To whom?
which to me seems to be, I mean, the way I understand it is a creative, well, where the creation, the physical creation of this emerges.
Uh-huh.
So why is it in a response? It's kind of a,
Well, it's a response to whom, though? It's to, in response to the I am, to God the Father. The will of God. Okay? So, but interesting part about this is the unlimited capacity for infinity response exists in the unqualified absolute. Now, why would that be? Because the infinity response would be what? Creation of something new, right?
Something
It's the
hasn't
pot-
happened yet.
Something hadn't happened yet. It's the potential of the future,
Right.
right? And where does it come from? It comes from the will of God. It comes from the I am. It comes from the Father, the first source and center, right? And that's what we're talking about here is the first source and center, right? Okay. Let's keep going. Diane, you want to take the next one?
318.6. The two absolutes, qualified and unqualified, are coordinated and unified in and by the universal absolute.
Okay, now what is this we're talking about? We're talking about that cohesiveness, the glue that takes the deity, and deified and the undeified, and brings them together, or the qualified and unqualified. So if you read this another way, it could say the two absolutes, the qualified deity, right, and the unqualified deity are coordinate and unified by the universal absolute. It's that part in between that takes a deity concept, a non-deity concept, and brings them into existence, right? So it's that glue that keeps it together in essence. I'll probably get to the mansion worlds and one of Melchizedek's there say, I can't believe you kept calling that glue. Okay. Roy, you want to take the next one?
Okay. The potential personality of an evolutionary moral being or of any other moral being is centered in the personality of the universal Father.
Now, did you see how that is in that circuit we just looked at? Right? The personality circuit. Now, what's interesting with the personality circuit, too, is we really have two circuits in one, don't we? We have the adjuster, and then we have the personality circuit. We're talking about two different things here, aren't we? Because the adjuster is what? A father fragment. It's a piece of God, right? An absolute piece of God. Starts from God, begins from God, is conscious from God, right? Then we have a personality that's a creation of God and is given to us. All right?
so here are we talking about the adjuster or the personality circuit?
No, we're talking about the personality circuit here.
Right. So it's interesting that when they talk about evolutionary moral being, they're talking about potential personality.
That's right. Why is it potential?
Because we could die.
No, because we haven't fused with the adjuster when we first
Meaning
started.
we could
We could
die,
choose not to.
or
Yeah,
we could never get there, right? We
That's
could
right,
at
yeah.
some point be annihilated. Right?
that's right. It's the will of God that you fuse with this father fragment. Okay? Does that make sense?
Right.
It's God's will. That is God's will. You have a choice through volition to not fuse with that fragment, right? What happens when you choose not to fuse with that fragment?
He never exists.
You never exist. You die. It's as if you never were.
We just that section of the 1 through 7 we just read is the first sources and center, how it is related to the universe.
Right.
So first point is that it's related in, we are talking about the infinite spirit and majesty and all those things, but the question that I have is where are the further adjusters?
Well, that's part of God. That's the first source and center. right? It's a fragment. You can't forget that the thought adjusters are Father fragments. They're actually a piece of God. They're just as much a piece of God as what? The infinite Son.
But they are with us here in the trenches. So isn't it part of our relation to the universe?
Yes. It is.
But is there like at least maybe indirectly in one of those points, one of those that refer us now to the
Well, it doesn't have to, because you can make that assumption because of it being a Father fragment and part of the Father. It remains, once an adjuster is created, it doesn't become a separate entity from the Father. You know that, right?
Right.
It's still part of the Father. So
But so is personality.
So is personality.
But here they're talking about personality.
But personality is different. Once personality is bestowed upon a being, it's no longer just part of the Father, is it? Its will is controlled by whom? Whomever it's assigned to. And in our case, it's a human will, right? So that personality immediately becomes controlled by whom? The being that it's in.
Well, isn't it the definition, the core definition of when we say I, doesn't it mean personality? Whatever
Yes,
was given,
it is.
right?
Yeah.
At the core,
That's
It
you.
is.
you. Or
Yeah.
the-
But now keep in mind that Father fragment is not that's not the case with the Father fragment. You do not control the will of the Father fragment. You know that, right?
Right.
Father fragment is still a Father fragment. The Father's will comes through that Father fragment. So the beautiful thing about this is this. You have through your own mind control your personality, don't you? You make choices for that personality.
Isn't it the other way around? Isn't it the personality that acts through the mind? And I wouldn't say control, but
you could go either way.
Okay.
You really could. But since you have your own volition, you can choose not to ever listen to that Father fragment, can't you? So you can go through your entire existence in a battle with God, the will of God. You really can. You can get to the end of your life, choose not to survive, and never once made a choice that was the will of God. So what does that make that Father fragment? That makes that Father fragment imprisoned within you and frustrated. That's right. Can you imagine going through a life like that as a thought adjuster? You're imprisoned within a mind and a soul that you cannot escape from. There's no escape. You're assigned to that being till it goes through its entire life. And only through death will that Father fragment be reassigned to someone else, right? And get another opportunity at it. That Father fragment never stops, does it? That personality, though, what? It stops.
That's
Ceases.
affirmation too, that we do have to choose here.
We have to choose.
Oh.
Now,
We don't have to choose here. We should choose here.
well, see, we've had this discussion last week.
Time,
Yeah. But when I say that, you think about we talk about if a child died that had not chose, that child gets a chance to choose on the mansion they
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah.
So in other words, if that child had a grew up to be adult, that child would have had a chance to make a decision. We have a chance to make a decision every day.
Yeah,
You
to
do.
follow God
Yeah.
or not.
But a lot of people are just so caught up in living on this planet, in this world, with no thought of real spirituality, that they don't make a real choice. But they're not bad, they're just not spiritual. So that's why there's all these sleeping
Well,
survivors. They
we're-
get another chance
We're going to talk about
when
that a
they're
lot
not
when we go through the life
stuck
of
on a
Christ.
screwed up planet and they have a real choice.
We'll go through that a little bit more later. No, I lost my train of thought. Let's keep going with it.
Personality and mind are all centered in the universal Father.
Yeah. The whole point is this, that all of this personality. They're talking about the circuit here, the personality circuit, right? They're talking about how the Father, all personality is centered in the personality circuit of the Father, right? But the difference in this is this. Personality is controlled by what? Mind. Right? Or vice versa. Either way, it works. But we are the ones that control that personality. We determine whether that personality survives. Now, what happens when we choose not to? Is all the experiences lost? No. You just don't have personality to integrate that experience any longer. Where's that experience goes? Goes to the Supreme, right? So like a drop of water, it goes back into the ocean, and all those experiences are part of the experience of the Supreme. Okay?
And the thought adjuster.
And the thought adjuster, that's correct. But do any of those expressions of personality ever get used again as that person? No. It never has consciousness again. The difference is that personality have consciousness and not us as we're alive, right?
And it gets used by whoever gets assigned, he sticks to it.
That's right.
At some point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, let's keep going. Reality. Who just read? You did, dude?
I think it was me.
We're just finished.
Don? You?
Reality, as comprehended by finite beings, is partial, relative, and shadowy.
Amen to that one.
The maximum deity reality, fully comprehensible by evolutionary finite creatures, is embraced within the Supreme Being. Nevertheless, there are antecedent and eternal realities, superfinite realities, which are ancestral to the Supreme Deity of evolutionary time-space creatures. In attempting to portray the origin and nature of universal reality, we are forced to employ the technique of time-space reasoning in order to reach the level of the finite mind. Therefore, must many of the simultaneous events of eternity be presented as sequential transactions.
Did y'all catch that? Our concepts are partial, relative, and shadowy to start out with. Okay, and then they try to reach us on the level of the finite mind.
Time, space, reasoning.
Time, space, reasoning. In other words, we don't even have the capacity to understand a lot of this stuff, right? But they always come back to what? The Supreme, don't they? Okay, which we're part of. Okay?
I have a question. Those who are at the level of finality, who are finaliters, right?
Yeah.
So they have already gone through paradise,
Mm-hmm.
and they stood in front of the Universal Father, I mean, all deities, and
Yeah.
so they have gone through all that. Are they, the finaliters, are they considered finite beings still, or not?
No, because they're finaliters at that point. They're six stage spirits at that point.
So they are no longer considered finite.
Their origin's considered finite, but they're not finite any longer. They're part of the six stage spirit group.
So then, isn't it true to say, if that's the case, isn't it true to say that the understanding of those realities from the finaliters and beyond are beyond the Supreme Being? Because they say that the maximum deity reality,
No.
comprehensible by evolutionary finite creatures,
No.
which is us right now, is embraced. So whatever we can possibly understand as a finite creatures, and I guess at the very least until we reach the
Yeah, but it does not go beyond the Supreme Being, because the Supreme Being encompasses
more.
more.
I see.
Finite, transcendent, and absolute.
So he knows all we can possibly understand, and he
Yeah.
knows everything that we can possibly understand for as long as we are in that finite mode.
Yeah,
But he knows more
past
and more.
Past, yeah. It'll understand. It'll have that understanding through the absonite period. It'll have the understanding up to the absolute period. It'll have the understanding all the way through the deity, universal, and unqualified absolute potentiality. Also, because it's an experiencing being, and it's learning this experience to use where into the future, into the potential, right?
All right. So
So,
then, is it?
It will never get to the point as spirits where we're outside the Supreme Being.
All right. So I guess would it be true to say then, if I understand correctly what you just said, then would it be true to say that as we progress at some point towards finaliters, we can get some understanding of reality beyond what is of finite creatures.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh,
That
that was
definitely,
all right.
definitely.
But doesn't
would-
the
would-
ultimate kick in at some point?
No. No, because
God,
that,
the ultimate? No.
no, no, because that's potential. That's always going to be going on. Okay? The ultimate is experiential, it's potential, it's all these things wrapped up into one. Okay, so the ultimate is a reality now to God the Father, isn't it? Because He sees what's going to happen, out through eternity. But it's constantly growing because of what? The experiential part is the supreme, right? So it keeps growing and growing and growing. It never stops growing. And when we become finaliter, why are we only 6 stage spirits? Did y'all ever think about that? We're only 6 stage spirits when we become finaliter. We don't become 7 stage spirits until what? Sometime in the potential future. You got that? Out in the outer space levels, maybe even beyond that. We don't know for sure. They just speculate. But they don't know why we only go to 6 stage spirits, other than the fact that there's so much more to come. So our experience for that 7th stage may be waiting in the outer space levels for that which is to come. It's God's plan for us to always grow, right? Okay, let's keep going. One more. Who's next? Linda?
Rob.
Oh, Rodney, I'm sorry. I skipped over you, Rodney.
My turn?
Yeah.
Yes.
As a,
Page 6, second
got
paragraph.
it, I got it. As a time-space creature, would view the origin and differentiation of reality, the eternal and the infinite I Am, achieved deity liberation from the fetters of unqualified infinity through the exercise of inherent and eternal free will. And this divorcement from unqualified infinity produced the first absolute divinity tension. This tension of infinity differential is resolved by the universal absolute, which functions to unify and coordinate the dynamic infinity of total deity and the static infinity of the unqualified absolute.
Okay, now that sounds like a lot of stuff, but let's break it down and make it simple, okay? We're talking about the original and differentiation of reality, the eternal infinite I Am, okay? And they're talking about Him achieving liberation, okay? From unqualified infinity. So what we're talking about is this. We're talking about God the Father, or the I Am, being involved through all known reality, out past the 7 universes, out past the outer space levels, even out past what we don't even know is out there, right? So this being is the one and only who can penetrate all of this, all the way to the end, right? And if He had not set up this tension to bring these deities out of Himself, He would not be able to experience things other than infinity, would He? He would not be able to experience the finite. So He created this tension. That's what they're talking about, this deity tension between the static deity of infinity and the unqualified absolute. So we have the unqualified absolute, what? Goes out past everything, right? And then we have deity. What is deity? It's personality, okay? So since we have a personality of quote deity, and we have this unqualified absolute, which is what? A being of infinity that experiences everything, all the primordial, everything you can think of. But is it a personality? No. So since it has no personality and the deity absolute has personality, it creates this tension between the two. You have this great separation between deity and personality, and what? absolute that has no deity and no personality, right? So what brings these two together?
Universal.
The universal. That's right. It brings the two tensions together and makes them work together. Does that make sense? That's all it is. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. So all that's explaining the resolving of the universal absolute as the unifying factor of that, right? Makes sense? That's not so terrible, difficult to understand.
When they say total deity, is it they say the dynamic infinity of total deity? Is it what is it? Is it the deity absolute, the total deity, or is it the deity absolute?
Okay, let me find it.
This
here.
tension of infinity differentiating with all
Called the
the
universal.
I
absolute
think it's
is
talking
function
about the I am there.
to unify and coordinate the dynamic infinity of total deity
Right.
and the static infinity of unqualified absolute. So is total deity the qualified absolute? Qualified absolute? Or
Yes.
the deity and controlled by the deity absolute?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So basically, he's saying total deity is missing something in a way, right?
Yes, it is. That's what creates that tension, right? Because you have a total deity that's missing part of what's it missing?
The potential.
The potential. That's right. Because one of them really is actuality, isn't it? If you think about it, even though they call them potentials, the deity, once it's got deity, it goes from being just a potential to what? It's an actual deity. It's got a personality at that point, right? So it's got both potential and actual, does it not? Now, what brings in the missing link in all of this is the supreme. And why is it the supreme? Because the supreme is necessary to bring in what? The combination of the finite, the absonite, and the absolute, and the personalities of those so they can be brought into what? The outer space levels. Okay? Without the supreme, you can't have beings in the four outer space levels. That's why it's part of what? The universal absolute. Right? Or the ultimate trinity. That's what I'm trying to think of. Okay?
Now, an interesting aspect is they refer to the unqualified absolute, which is, since it has the reserve of everything this potential, you can, from our mindset, think of it as being bigger
Yeah.
than the what is already in existence.
Yeah.
And they consider that as a static infinity.
Yeah.
So static, the point is static, right?
Static
Doesn't move.
infinity.
It's like the reserve of everything that is to come and static.
It's like this big void, or a suction, you know? And the deity is being sucked in to what? The unqualified, isn't it? In other words, if you create the space, it's kind of like the Kevin Costner, if you build it, they'll come, you know? God creates this space, and once He's created the space, it creates this tension to be filled, right? He don't create nothing for nothing. So as soon as He creates the space, what needs to come into it? The deity absolute to manage it, you know? So it creates this void that has to be filled. It can't do anything but be filled. It's the will of God that happens. So that's what they're talking about, this tension. This tension is, I'll create this space and you'll have to fill it. And now think of this,
But that void you're talking about, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the space of the
Space,
grand universe,
yeah,
the master
void-
universe, or are you talking about
the outer space levels.
which is part of the master universe, right?
Yeah, the master
Overall,
Yeah.
you're not talking about the unqualified absolute, are you?
Yes, I am. Talk about the unqualified absolute. Because what prepares that space? The unqualified absolute.
Well, but
Until the unqualified absolute goes out into the space, that would it have anything to be filled? No, because there's no. God has to prepare that space, and that's part of the.
preparing the space, but filling
Yeah.
that space is not the same thing as filling the unqualified absolute, is it?
Yes.
That-
Well, yeah, but the unqualified absolute never stops, though. See, it goes on and on
That's
and on
that's
and on.
that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, but
meaning that
it's-
what this is what
That's what the tension is, constantly.
But-
See, it's constantly pulling out.
right now what is in this when you consider the outer space is kind of coming out of the unqualified absolute because there is some creation happening, meaning that what our professors, physics professors used to say, nothing is created, everything is transformed, right?
Transformed.
And at this level, is no longer true. There is true creation.
Yeah.
But maybe it will remain indefinitely in the space. I don't know. But the whatever once it has come out, right, is no longer part of the unqualified absolute.
That's true. It's not. But think of it this way, Jill. When the unqualified absolute goes out into the void of space and starts preparing the primordial matter, okay, it's just a preparation, isn't it? The creation doesn't stop even when the architects of the master universe go out there, does it? They just continue
Until
with the
suns go out
preparation.
there.
It's when that's right. When the seven
100 billion.
well, yeah, when the architects go out, when the creator sons, the creative mother spirits, the supreme, and all seven of these beings get involved, that's when the creation starts. Okay? It's not until those get involved do you have a creation. Before that, you just have what? A prepared area. Okay? There's a difference. The creation itself goes through the seven.
It's like the
master
builder went out there
spirits.
and selected a site.
Yeah, it's a site. That's what it is. And then the builder comes in and says, the creator sons are the
Come on,
builders.
guys.
Yeah, I want this here, and this here, and this here, right? And then all the functioning starts. And it's noon, I know, y'all, so we need to, we didn't get very far today again, did we? That's all right.
Get far enough.
That's the next page.
Did we?
Now we turn the page.
Where are we at? We're at 3:22, right? Okay, we'll start here next time. Linda, would you say a little prayer for us to
Sure.
close this out?
Our Father, we thank you so much for this time. We thank you for all the time and effort and studying that Roger has put into this in order to make this presentation possible. We thank you for everyone that's here that is desirous of learning more about you and about this incredible universe and this revelation that you've given us. We thank you for it, and we just ask you as we go our separate ways this week that you would just keep us near you, keep us close to you, help us to be led by you, and we just love you and give you all the praise for all of these things in your son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us. Let me stop the video here. We'll have lunch.